The fork scraped softly against my empty plate, but I barely heard it over the sound of Colton sipping his coffee like it was any other Tuesday morning. Our golden retriever, Max, thumped his tail against the floor, hopeful for a bite of bacon that wasn't coming. Not this morning. Colton folded his newspaper. Yes, he still reads the real paper, and cleared his throat like he was about to ask for the salt. Mara, we should get a divorce. Just like that. No let-in, no emotion. Just a sentence that didn't match the smell of cinnamon toast still wafting through our small Indiana kitchen. I stared at him, thinking I must have heard wrong. "What?" I whispered, blinking like it might make the words go away. He didn't even flinch. "It's just not working. You know it. I'll handle the paperwork." He stood, stretched like he'd just finished a yoga session, and reached for his work jacket off the back of the chair. I was still in my robe, my hair damp from the shower, the same robe I'd worn through the last 4 winters, the one he'd bought me when I got the job at the elementary school. My chest felt tight. "Is there someone else?" I asked, the words foreign in my mouth. He paused at the door, glancing at his watch like he was late for something. "Mara, don't make this dramatic. We're just not right for each other anymore." Then he left, just like that. Our 10-year marriage, the house we renovated together, the holidays we hosted, gone in a sentence over eggs and burnt toast. I stood in our kitchen for what felt like hours, the ticking clock above the sink suddenly louder than anything else in the room. I think I sat on the floor for a while. I don't remember crying, just going still. But here's where it gets strange. Not even an hour later, the doorbell rang. Once, then twice, then came a knock. I dragged myself up, thinking maybe Colton had forgotten his keys, or Max had knocked something over. Instead, when I opened the door, a woman stood there with wind-blown, honey-blonde hair, oversized sunglasses, and a little smirk that made my stomach twist. One hand was propped on her hip, the other rested gently on her very pregnant belly. "Well," she said, stepping inside without waiting, "I was wondering when I'd get to meet the starter wife." Her voice was soft but sharp, like a knife hidden in silk. I couldn't even respond. She scanned the living room like it was a listing. "He said you'd be the type to bake banana bread and keep everything beige." Yikes. He was right. She plopped onto my couch like it was hers. "I'm Brielle, by the way. Colton's future. Hope you're not too attached to this place." I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. But what she said next? That snapped something in me. "Don't worry. He promised we'd give you time to process. I mean, you've had your run, right? Now it's my turn." I was still standing in the doorway when she said, "I mean, Colton told me you were kind of temporary." I wish I could say I slammed the door or yelled or threw something, but I just stood there. Not because I was weak, because I realized in that exact moment that I didn't know who Colton really was, but I was about to find out. Before we go on, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your country or city in the comments. It always amazes us how far these stories travel. And if this is your first time here, welcome. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss one of these unbelievable true stories. You never know. Someone else might need to hear this one. Now, back to what happened after that knock, because trust me, the worst hadn't even started yet. She left without ceremony. No slam door, no final insult, just a perfumed breeze and the clack of her designer heels fading down the porch steps. I stood there for what felt like a full minute before Max patted over and nudged my hand. His head tilted like he couldn't figure out what was wrong. And honestly, neither could I. My legs carried me back to the couch she'd just desecrated, and I sat down like a ghost haunting my own house. The baby blanket I'd crocheted last Christmas still hung over the armrest. The one Colton said he loved too much to give away. I stared at it until the colors blurred. Then my phone buzzed. It was Colton. Colton, let's keep this civil. I'll come by for my stuff Saturday. Please don't make this harder than it is. Harder than it is? I reread that line 3 times, like maybe I missed a word. This man, my husband, had just sent his pregnant mistress to my front door an hour after blindsiding me with a divorce over breakfast. And he was asking me not to make things hard? I didn't respond. I couldn't. I felt hollow, like the words had scraped something out of me. I curled into a ball on the couch, surrounded by the pieces of a life I didn't know had already ended. On the wall above me hung a photo from our wedding, a rustic vineyard in Tennessee. We'd laughed that whole day, or maybe I did. I got up and took it down, not angrily, just gently, like I was finally tucking something in for the last time. The next morning was worse. His mother, Eloise, showed up with a casserole and a stiff smile. "I heard what happened, dear," she said, placing the glass dish on my counter like it was an offering. "But these things, they happen. And, well, Brielle is such a lovely girl, polished, ambitious. She'll help Colton grow his business." I didn't even answer. I just stared at her, stunned that someone could say something so cruel and call it kindness. She patted my shoulder with a hand as cold as her eyes. "Now don't do anything rash. It's best if you move on quickly, quietly. Dignity matters, you know." I didn't speak. I couldn't trust myself to. When she left, I put her casserole straight in the trash. But the worst of it came that Friday, when I went to the county clerk's office to file for temporary financial support until the divorce processed. That's when I found out something I wasn't supposed to. The clerk had a soft voice and avoided my eyes as she pulled up the property deed. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Reese. The house was transferred to Colton Reese and Brielle West last month. You're no longer on the deed." For a second, I thought the floor might open up and swallow me. "That's impossible," I whispered. "I bought this house. I inherited the down payment from my mom. The deed's in my name." But it wasn't. Not anymore. Colton had convinced me to co-sign a refinance after the roof leak in March. Paperwork I'd barely skimmed because I trusted him. Trusted him to protect what we built. Trusted him like a fool. I walked out of that office with my heart beating in my ears, my hands shaking so badly I dropped my keys in the parking lot. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at the steering wheel, trying to understand how I had gone from homeowner to guest in my own life. Colton had rewritten my place in the story, downgraded me to a footnote, and still. I said nothing. I didn't call him. I didn't cry in public. I went home, my not home, and fed Max. I watered the succulents I had nurtured for 5 years. I lay on the bed we picked together, knowing full well he'd be picking it up next week with the movers. But that night, as I folded laundry in silence, a sweatshirt fell from the stack. It was my mom's old college hoodie, the one I'd worn during every flu season and every thunderstorm. I sat down on the floor and clutched it like a lifeline. And that's when I cracked. Not loud sobs or a dramatic scream, just silent, gasping grief that came in waves. For my marriage, for my mother, who wasn't here to warn me, for the woman I used to be before love made her blind. I thought about calling my best friend Heather, but she was Colton's cousin. And after the divorce announcement, she texted, "I'm staying neutral. Hope you understand." I did, which only made it worse. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened the old cedar chest in the attic, the one my mom used to keep her journals in. She'd been a school teacher, neat handwriting, always organized. Tucked between her lesson plans and grocery lists was a sealed envelope with my name on it, in her careful cursive. I didn't open it, not yet, but I held it in my hands for a long time that night, staring at my name, wondering why she hadn't given it to me sooner, wondering if she'd known I'd need it one day, like today. That was the moment I realized I wasn't the one falling apart. Colton was. He had to be. Why else would a man trade loyalty for a rush job with a girl who smiled like she was selling you a timeshare? Why else would he secretly strip the deed and rush to the altar with a baby in tow? Why else would Eloise tell me to stay quiet with that frozen smile? Something was wrong. Something bigger than betrayal. And when I finally opened that envelope, that's when I knew this wasn't just about love. This was about money, legacy, control. And I wasn't about to let them take one more thing from me. The next morning, I sat cross-legged on the floor with that letter in my lap like it was a ticking clock. Max rested his head on my foot, as if even he understood this moment mattered. Outside, the sky was gunmetal gray, the kind of color that made everything feel heavier. I finally broke the seal and unfolded the note. My mother's handwriting greeted me like a voice from beyond. "Mara, if you're reading this, then life has hit you hard, and I'm so sorry. I wish I could be there to hold your hand like I always tried to. But you're strong, baby. You've always been stronger than you know." I choked back tears as I read the next lines. There are things you don't know about the house, about the trust, about what I left behind for you. I couldn't say it out loud. Not with the way Colton looked at you, always too interested in my estate for my liking. I hope I'm wrong about him. But if I'm not, everything you need is in the blue folder hidden under the false panel in my jewelry box. Don't let them take what's yours. My hands started shaking again, but this time, not from grief. This time, from adrenaline. I bolted to my mother's old vanity upstairs, which I'd kept untouched since she passed 2 years ago. Her jewelry box still sat in the corner. I opened every drawer, then pulled gently at the velvet lining until my fingers found the edge of a panel that popped out with a soft click. Behind it, a thick blue folder. Inside, neat stacks of legal documents, photocopies of bank transfers, trust paperwork, and, most damning, an updated will. Not hers. Mine. A living trust, set to mature when I turned 40, in less than 7 months. The payout? Over $2.3 million, including stocks, property assets, and the original house deed. But there was one condition. If I was divorced or legally separated at the time of distribution, the entire sum would revert to a charity of my mother's choosing. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. The divorce over breakfast, the deed transfer, the speed of Brielle's appearance. Colton didn't just fall out of love, He was timing my removal, and he'd almost pulled it off. I stared at the trust papers like they were a treasure map someone had tried to burn. But it wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the truth, the manipulation, the way I was being rewritten out of my own story. And now, I had a reason to fight. I couldn't do it alone. So I called the only person I trusted more than anyone, my cousin Lena, who lived one town over. She was a legal researcher and paralegal, sharp, calm, no nonsense. When she picked up, I didn't even say hello. "Can you come over? You okay?" "No, but I'm done pretending to be." She was at my door in under an hour, hair still damp, glasses slipping down her nose. She sat at the kitchen table while I laid out the documents, one by one. Her face went pale when she saw the trust. "This clause," she said, tapping the line about the divorce, nullifying the payout. "It's airtight. No wonder they moved fast." They? Colton and whoever else is advising him. Trust me. This isn't just a dumb move by a guy with a midlife crisis. Someone gave him legal direction. We spent the next 3 hours scanning documents, making copies, and mapping a timeline. Lena used her work laptop to dig into recent real estate transactions. Her brows furrowed. "Mara, the house?" It was transferred into a joint business trust between Colton and Brielle. They've already borrowed against it. "What does that mean?" "It means he's not just taking the house, he's spending it, probably to stay afloat. Look at this. He's taken out a loan against your equity. He needed cash. Fast." I sat back in my chair, my head spinning. My mother's home, our home, had been turned into a bank account for his ego and his lies. But Lena wasn't done. "You know what this means, right?" she said quietly. "If you file for divorce now, the trust is gone. But if he files and you don't contest separation, and you stay legally married until your birthday, the trust pays out," I finished, "and he gets nothing." Exactly. That was the moment I stopped grieving. It was no longer about a failed marriage, or a cheating husband, or a smug little homewrecker with frosted lips and a baby on the way. This was a con, a strategy. And now that I had the playbook, I was going to flip it. But the first thing I had to do was make sure Colton believed I was broken. If he suspected I knew, he'd shift tactics. I texted him one sentence. "I understand. I won't make this messy." He replied in seconds. "Thank you. I appreciate you taking the high road." That night, Lena and I gathered every financial document I could find. Bank statements, tax returns, my mother's death certificate, property surveys. Lena promised to take them to a lawyer friend she trusted. Meanwhile, I logged into our old joint bank account, shut down months ago, I noticed, and then checked Colton's public business license. His remodeling company had been quietly dissolved 2 weeks ago. He wasn't starting a new life. He was running from an old one. And something else gnawed at me. Why had Eloise pushed so hard for silence? Why had she shown up before Brielle even announced her arrival? The pieces weren't all there yet, but my gut said this wasn't just about Colton's greed. There was generational greed. As Lena left that evening, she turned to me and said something I'll never forget. "You always thought you were the safe choice. But maybe that's why they picked you. People don't guard what they think they already own." She was right. They thought they had me figured out, that I'd fold quietly. But what Colton didn't know, what Eloise would never see coming, was that the girl who kept things beige, she was gone. The woman standing in her place was done waiting. The next week was a master class in pretending. I made French toast the morning Colton came to pick up his clothes, humming softly like I didn't have folders of evidence buried under the floorboards. I wore soft colors. I kept my tone light. I asked if he wanted to keep the framed picture of us in Charleston from our 5th anniversary, and he blinked like he didn't expect the question, like he'd forgotten we even went. No, you can toss it, he said, distracted, folding one of his jackets into a box. Actually, Brielle doesn't like clutter. We're going minimalist now. Minimalist, sure. Minimal loyalty, minimal conscience, minimal spine. He didn't even notice the copy of his signed loan agreement, sitting in plain sight on the corner of the kitchen table, paper-clipped and quiet, like a bomb waiting to go off. But as much as I was controlling the stage at home, outside of it, things were slipping. That Friday, Lena texted me mid-afternoon. Lena, we have a problem. Your name is being floated in some very specific circles. Word is, you're mentally unwell. I stared at the screen, then blinked slowly. Mara. From who? Lena. Can't confirm, but it's from someone close to Colton. Might be his mother. Mental instability. It was a tactic I knew well, common in financial abuse cases, especially when a woman was about to gain something significant. Paint her as unstable, make her seem unfit, create doubt. That way, when the truth finally surfaces, it's already contaminated. And then it got worse. The next day, I walked into the grocery store to grab dog food and coffee when I heard someone whisper, "That's her, the one he left." Not behind my back, next to me. I turned. It was one of the PTA moms from the school. Another chimed in. I heard she lost it, like emotionally. Wouldn't leave the house for days. I gripped the cart handle so hard my knuckles turned white. It didn't matter that the stories weren't true. What mattered was how quickly they spread. I got home, locked the door, and stared at myself in the mirror. My eyes were tired, my jaw tight. I looked like someone hanging on by a thread. And maybe that's what they were counting on. For me to unravel, for me to scream in the lawyer's office, for me to cry at the bank, for me to validate their lies. Not today. Instead, I called Lena. I need to know more about Brielle, I said. Where she came from, what she's doing. Lena went quiet for a beat. Already working on it. That evening, she came over with a manila folder in hand. Brielle West legally changed her name 4 years ago. Used to be Brielle Kramer. Had a short-lived career as a real estate assistant in Chicago. Was fired for misconduct involving forgery of signatures on closing documents. No criminal charges, but she was blacklisted. Moved here a year later. Met Colton 6 months ago. My jaw dropped. 6 months? She was introduced through Eloise's social club. Of course, Colton hadn't just cheated on me with Brielle. He'd been gifted her, hand-picked, and she'd been playing the long game. But now, I understood her angle. She was a financial climber, a pretty mask for a deeper scheme, and it was time she knew I wasn't the idiot they thought I was. The next day, I walked into the Garden Table Cafe at exactly 11:45 a.m. Lena had tipped me off. Brielle and Eloise had a standing lunch reservation there on Tuesdays. I wore a navy blazer and heels, my mother's vintage pearl studs, and carried a slim black folder in hand. I looked like a woman who had never once fallen apart. They were already seated by the window, sipping lemon water and laughing like they'd won something. When Brielle spotted me, her smile tightened. Eloise's eyes narrowed. "Afternoon," I said calmly, placing the folder on the edge of their table. "Just wanted to drop this off." Brielle lifted an eyebrow. "What is it, sweetheart? A peace offering?" "No," I said sweetly. "It's a certified copy of the trust payout clause and a timeline of Colton's loan defaults. Might want to read the fine print, especially if you're planning to buy any more throw pillows with my equity." Eloise leaned forward, her voice low and venomous. "You're making a scene." I smiled. "Not yet, but keep pushing me." I walked away before they could say another word. Later that evening, Colton called. I let it go to voicemail. Then he texted, "Colton, what are you doing? You're ruining this for everyone." "Mara, I'm not ruining anything. I'm protecting what's mine." "Colton, I didn't want it to get ugly." "Mara, then you shouldn't have underestimated me." But even with my small wins, the pressure didn't let up. That week, I received a call from Child Protective Services. An anonymous report had been filed claiming I'd been erratic, threatening, and had kicked Colton out violently. I had no kids, but still, it was a tactic, a record, a whisper of instability that could be used later if things went legal. It wasn't just character assassination, it was groundwork. But they forgot something crucial. I knew who I was. I knew what my mother left me, and I wasn't alone anymore. That same night, Lena texted again. "Lena, you're going to want to see this." She sent a photo, a blurry shot taken outside a courthouse. Eloise, holding hands with a man I didn't recognize. A man wearing a dark pinstripe suit and a face I couldn't quite place. Until I did. The same estate attorney who handled my mother's will. Suddenly, this wasn't just about Brielle or Colton. It was about Eloise. She'd been watching me for years, smiling sweetly at Thanksgiving while orchestrating a betrayal in slow motion. And now she was trying to rewrite my inheritance behind my back. They had lawyers, lies, and no shame. But I had my mother's voice in my head. "Mara, don't let them take what's yours." So I wouldn't. Not quietly. Not ever. The invitation came wrapped in white linen stationery and veiled arrogance. "You're cordially invited to an intimate garden brunch in celebration of new beginnings, hosted by Eloise Reese." Hand-delivered by a courier in a pressed button-down. There was no return address, just a note scribbled in blue ink. "Let's keep things civil. For appearances." For appearances. That was her gospel. I held the invite like it might burn through my palm. I knew what this was. A show. A perfectly plated performance. To the neighbors, this would look like Eloise being gracious. To Brielle, a coronation. And to me, an execution in slow motion. Lena nearly burst into laughter when I showed it to her. "She actually invited you?" "Not me," I said. "The placeholder." "You're not going, right?" "Oh, I'm going," I replied, folding the invitation and sliding it into my purse. "And I'm not going empty-handed." Sunday came with the kind of sunshine that makes everything feel fake. Their backyard was staged like a southern living spread, white tablecloths, pink lemonade in crystal pitchers, slices of cucumber fanned across artisan crackers. Brielle wore a pale blue dress that hugged her bump in that curated, effortless way. Her hair had been curled within an inch of its life. Colton stood near the mimosa bar in a chambray shirt, laughing too loud. And Eloise? She wore pearls. I arrived precisely 15 minutes late, which gave everyone time to notice me. Conversation slowed, but didn't stop. I heard my name float across the patio like a curse. Mara. Eloise's voice cut through the air like garden shears. How lovely of you to come. She kissed the air near my cheek. You're just in time for the toast. I smiled. Wouldn't miss it. They sat me between Brielle and some family friend named Donna, who smelled like gin and condescension. I took one polite bite of quiche, one sip of lukewarm coffee, and waited. Then Eloise stood and tapped her glass with the edge of her fork. Friends, she began, her voice a perfect blend of faux modesty and authority. We're so grateful you could join us in embracing this new chapter for Colton and Brielle. It's a time of fresh starts, forgiveness, and family. Her eyes lingered on me as if daring me to flinch. We believe in grace and moving forward with dignity. She sat. Applause followed. Some hesitant, some practiced. I waited for the silence, then I stood. I didn't raise my glass. I didn't smile. I'd like to say something, too, I said softly, letting my voice carry over the table. Eloise's posture stiffened. Brielle shifted in her chair. Colton looked like he'd swallowed his mimosa. I've always believed in family, I began, and in honesty, which is why I'm grateful to share a few facts today. First, that my mother's will contains a trust, one that matures in less than 6 months, a trust I am still the sole beneficiary of, as long as I remain married. A few guests blinked, unsure if this was a speech or a warning. But second, I continued, I've recently learned that someone attempted to tamper with that will. That meetings were held, private, unsanctioned, between Eloise Reese and the estate attorney my mother entrusted. And third, I paused, opening the folder I'd brought with me and holding up a notarized copy of the original trust, that my husband has committed financial fraud, including transferring property under false pretenses and securing lines of credit against stolen equity. Gasps now. One woman actually dropped her fork. Brielle stood up. This is insane. She's unstable. Colton told me she's been acting irrational. I turned to her, calm and razor sharp. You forged documents in Chicago, Brielle. You were fired for it. Your name change doesn't erase that. Her face went white. Colton rose from his chair. Mara, stop. This isn't the place. No, I said, eyes locked on his. It's exactly the place. You brought everyone here to celebrate your rewritten version of the truth. I'm just restoring the original script. Eloise's hands trembled. You have no idea what you're talking about. I pulled out one last document, an email printout Lena had recovered, between the estate lawyer and Eloise. It referenced a request to revisit beneficiary status and delay asset release pending mental health concerns. I held it up for everyone to see. This is what you do, Eloise. You manufacture instability. You manipulate behind closed doors, but not anymore. I'm filing a cease and desist. I'm challenging the title transfer. And I've already reported the fraudulent loans. Colton stepped forward, jaw clenched. You're making a scene. No, I said, calm as a lake just before a storm. I'm drawing the line. I left the folder on the table and turned to leave. But just before I walked away, I said one last thing. You called me temporary, placeholder, safe. What you forgot is that quiet doesn't mean weak. Sometimes it just means we're watching, waiting. And then we strike. I didn't look back. By Monday morning, the air had changed. It wasn't just in my house, where the silence had finally become peace rather than punishment. It was in town. People looked at me differently now, not with pity, with caution. Like they'd realized the woman who kept her head down could also raise hell when pushed. Colton didn't show up for his usual gym session that week. Brielle's maternity shoot mysteriously vanished from social media. And Eloise? She locked down her Facebook entirely. No more brunch photos, no more inspirational quotes about grace and growth. The mask had cracked, but the real consequence came on Thursday. Lena called me at 8:14 a.m., her voice filled with both awe and satisfaction. It's happening. The bank just froze the equity line. I sat at the kitchen island, coffee in one hand, Max curled around my feet. Good. Colton had over-leveraged the property. My property, assuming he'd have access to my trust in a few months. But with the trust clause enforced, the lawsuit filed, and the cease and desist order served, the walls were closing in. By Friday, his business accounts were frozen too. Turns out, he hadn't just spent against my home. He'd also used my mother's old property as collateral for a renovation loan he defaulted on months ago. And with the ownership in dispute, creditors were circling like vultures. That afternoon, I got a text from an unknown number. Unknown. I know you think you've won, but you've ruined my life. Hope you're proud. I stared at the screen, then deleted it. I didn't owe him silence anymore. That weekend, I met with my lawyer, an estate litigator Lena had referred. We reviewed the documentation, including Lena's research trail. You have an incredibly strong case, he said. Between the trust clause, the fraudulent transfer, and the attempted manipulation of mental health records, this is going to move fast. And the house? I asked. It's yours, he confirmed. We're filing an emergency injunction to block the resale and reverse the deed. I exhaled. That night, I sat in the guest room, my mother's old study, and looked around at the shelves of books she once loved. Her favorite ceramic owl still sat on the corner of her desk. I hadn't noticed it before, but taped to the bottom was a tiny note. Her handwriting again. You were never second choice. Never forget that. I didn't. A week later, Brielle filed a police report. Not against me, but against Colton. He'd withheld financial information from her, she claimed, misrepresented his business standing, endangered the health of her pregnancy. But the real twist. According to Lena's friend at the courthouse, there wasn't a pregnancy, no hospital records, no OB visits, no insurance filings. The bump had been real. The baby? Not so much. It was a prop, a calculated tool to manipulate Colton, control the timeline, and cement her place as the next chapter. But when I pulled out the will, when the illusion of security collapsed, so did her patience. She turned on him to save herself. Classic. And Eloise? She tried to distance herself, claimed she had no knowledge of the forgery attempts, that she was just supporting her son. But Lena had already filed an ethics complaint with the state bar against the attorney Eloise had met with. And his emails, recovered, time-stamped, archived, told a different story. They'd discussed reclassification of beneficiary status. They'd discussed a diagnosis that didn't exist. They'd discussed me as a threat that needed to be neutralized. The complaint triggered a disciplinary review. The attorney's license was suspended pending investigation. And Eloise? Her name was included in the filing. I didn't need to ruin them. They ruined themselves. All I did was bring a flashlight. The irony? After all their schemes, all the lies, all the manipulation, the trust paid out on my birthday. To me, uncontested, fully intact. I didn't celebrate with champagne. I didn't post a photo. I sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where he asked for a divorce over eggs and coffee, and watched the sun filter through the curtains. And I let it be quiet. That kind of silence? That's peace. A month after the trust cleared, I planted roses where Colton used to park his truck. The soil was hard at first, clay and gravel from years of oil and neglect. But once I broke through the crust, it yielded, soft, rich, ready for something new. Max sat on the porch, tail wagging, watching me work. The new fence was up, the locks had been changed, and the Reese nameplate had been removed from the mailbox. I hadn't replaced it yet. I was still deciding what I wanted it to say. The house looked different now, lighter. I'd painted the living room in my mother's favorite shade of eucalyptus green. The old couch was gone, replaced by one I picked out myself. The kind that swallows you whole after a long day. My diploma finally hung on the wall. Something Colton once said looked too self-congratulatory for a home. Now it was right where it belonged, above the desk I'd started using again. Because that's the thing they never expect. The ones who call you temporary. They think silence means weakness. That holding your tongue is the same as surrender. That playing fair makes you disposable. But silence is just strategy. Patience is planning. And survival? That's power they can't calculate. Colton never called again. The lawsuit moved forward without him. His assets, what was left of them, were being liquidated. Brielle moved out of town, or so I heard. Rumor had it she was trying to rebrand again. A new city, a new name, another mark. I almost felt sorry for whoever was next. Almost. As for Eloise, her once pristine reputation was in freefall. Her bridge club politely cut ties. The local paper printed a piece on elder financial abuse. And though names weren't mentioned, everyone knew. Her attempts to quietly sell her lake house stalled when a background check flagged the ethics complaint under her name. I never saw her again, but Lena told me her attorney quit. People think justice comes like thunder, loud, sudden, dramatic. But sometimes it comes like rust, quiet, creeping, inevitable. I used part of the trust to fund a scholarship at the elementary school where I worked, the Lively Legacy Fund, named after my mother. Every spring, one child from a single-parent home would be given a full-ride scholarship to a private high school or summer enrichment of their choice. I knew how much a chance could change a life, and I kept a little room in the house, a guest room converted into a reading nook, for women who needed a place to think, to breathe, to plan their next move. Lena called it the recovery room. No one stayed more than a few nights, but every one of them left standing taller than when they arrived. I never wanted revenge. I wanted clarity. And now that I had it, I knew exactly what to do. I told the full story to the lawyer, to the court, to the women in my community who whispered their own stories over cups of lukewarm coffee at Sunday meetups. One by one, we stopped being quiet. Because silence may be survival, but truth is rebirth. The day I planted the final rosebush, I found another note tucked into the back of my mother's old gardening book. Just 2 lines. written long before Colton ever entered my life. Let them call you temporary. That's how you build without interference. Then one day, when they look up, you've built everything. And I had. Not just a house, a future, a name, a self. So, to the women who've been called placeholders, safe bets, or stepping stones, I hope you know you're none of those things. You're the real story. And they only figure it out when it's too late.